So again, no idea this was coming. 5 a.m., still dark outside. It's April, it's cold. Our dog is barking at the window, so we get up and Keonne goes over to the window and there's a light kind of rising up on an extended arm, and you can kind of vaguely see there's people shuffling about and cars. And once the light gets up to the window and sees that Keonne is standing there, starts saying, come out with your hands up. And, so I quickly slip on slippers and a robe, and, we're going downstairs. I'm trying to get the dog on a leash for, all the reasons you can imagine. And Keonne's just in shorts, and we go out and we put our hands up, and there's light shining, and, we notice that there's laser sights on both our chests, and, hands are up, and they're telling him to get down on the ground and me to put the dog away, and just people everywhere, and they separate us and handcuff both of us behind our backs, and he's put into a car, and I'm just stood with a local police deputy outside in the cold while I watch them first fly a drone into my house, into the door. And this is a small, 2-bedroom cottage. We're not talking, anything intimidating or anything. And then, about 40 agents, tactical gear, camo, night vision, armed, file into the house and I guess clear it. I don't know what they were clearing it from. But it was a startling awakening, to being woken up that way, and then not fully understanding why, thinking, do they have the wrong house? What's going on? And then eventually they take me in, and then Keonne's arraigned that day and able to come home, and kind of were then able to see what the charges were and that this was related to his work, to Samourai Wallet.
So in that period, they'd obviously taken Keonne away. You don't go back into the house. They're then searching the premises. You have to go elsewhere. When did you realize what was happening and why they were there?
I didn't fully know until, what the charges were or anything, until after his arraignment and we were able to speak. I called the company's attorney because it's the only attorney I knew, number-wise. He woke him up, and then he called some defense attorneys because that's not his, thank you, it's not his, his expertise. And they, once they had left, came back, and kitchen's trash. There's, cut open a bag of flour. Again, I don't know what they were looking for. They obviously took every electronic in the office, and Keonne is a bit of a electronic hoarder, so there was a lot to take. But, it was just kind of chaotic. But it wasn't until we were able to talk and he was able to tell me the charges that I really understood what was going on.
And was he home by that point?
In that evening, yes, the same night. Thankfully, Bill, unfortunately, was not. So they did a simultaneous raid on Bill and his wife's house in Portugal. So this is a massive coordinated effort, as you can imagine, flying agents to Pennsylvania, where I am, flying agents to Portugal, and then coordinating it so that they're hitting both of our houses at the same time. Because they wanted him extradited, and he is not a Portuguese citizen, they kept him in a medieval prison for 3 to 5 months, somewhere in there.
Crazy. So at this point, though, when you're home, you realize why Keonne's been arrested. You must be thinking, well, we're within the FinCEN guidelines. Everything has been done above board. Do you feel like at that point, this case is going to be, it's misunderstood, it's going to be thrown out, everything will be okay? Oh,
totally. We thought they don't understand how the software works. They think it's, a traditional mixer, as I don't know if people know, is something where you let go of custody, you're sending it to someone else with the trust that they will either send it on to whoever you specify or send it back to you. And that is a money transmitter. That is money laundering, potentially. You need a license for that. Every exchange could be considered that, and that's why they have to have a license. Because we were non-custodial and because it's all, cryptographically working and, behind the scenes and blinded signatures and all that. Like, they just don't understand. We'll explain it, they'll get it, and then they'll move on. But that's not what happened.
Yeah, obviously that wasn't the case. So from that point, Keonne comes home, you realize what the charges are, you know that you're going to have to fight this in court. When did it go from being this thing that was like a case you feel like you can win, the facts are on your side, to being like, okay, this is not going well?
So if you haven't had any interactions with the legal system, it's a very slow process. So we were over a year into it when we were finally supposed to be presenting our major motions. This is going to be our first real hearing where the lawyers get up and argue different things and the judge is going to rule on stuff. Until this, we've had some procedural discussions, but nothing's really happened in the case. And a few days before this big hearing, everything's been prepared. We are informed that our judge at the time, who's Judge Berman, has recused himself. No explanation why. He's still being a judge on other cases. And we've been assigned a new judge, Judge Denise Coates. Thinking, okay, I guess we'll just present this in front of her. Hearing date stays the same, doesn't change. And we go in, again, thinking it's going to be a couple hours, have several motions. We had a Brady violation motion to discuss. We had our motion to dismiss. We had some procedural other things. And
can I just interrupt you very briefly?
Yeah.
Sorry, I think that's a really important thing that you just talked about there, the Brady violation.
Yeah.
I think it's worth explaining that, because to me, when I heard about this, as an outsider just watching the case loosely, I thought that was going to be the thing that meant the Samourai guys walked free. Do you want to explain what that was and why didn't that have an impact on the case in the way that maybe people like me thought it would?
Yeah. So a Brady violation is something when the government withholds exculpatory evidence that's beneficial to the defense. That's a big no-no. And our judge at the time had a very short window that this kind of evidence needs to be handed over. So we're getting pretty far into the case, and our attorney thinks to ask the prosecutors, hey, have you ever had a conversation with FinCEN? FinCEN is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. They are the regulatory body in charge of money service businesses and financial crimes in general. That's their role. They operate under Treasury. They're given their authority through Congress. So he asks them, and the prosecution says, oh yes, in fact, 6 months before indictment, we did ask FinCEN what they thought about Samourai Wallet and if they needed a money service business, and they said no. And then they brought indictment and charges for money service anyways, and then hit it.
So that means basically, like, if we go back a little earlier in the conversation, you said essentially exchanges could be considered mixers if they didn't have to go through all these regulations, KYC all their clients, all their customers. FinCEN is the company that authorizes or enforces that companies do that. And so if you were taking control of customers' funds, then you have to register, you have to KYC everyone. And that same agency said that even if Samourai wanted to KYC, we would have said no because they don't meet the terms.
Yes.
And then you still had to go to court. So what's missing? Like, what am I missing? Why did that happen?
I don't know. We don't know. And I think everyone was like you. I thought that this is going to be it, right? How can you be charging someone for not registering when the people who you're supposed to register with say you don't need to? But that's kind of this whole case, right? It was unprecedented, novel theories put forth by prosecution in a way to bypass the lawmaking process and enforce regulations on the industry as a whole. Like, Samourai was the direct target on this, but they're not, right, small compared to kind of what they were really after, which is, they got a lot of companies to pull out of the U.S. or to stop their development or stifle innovation in, privacy-focused ways. And, yeah.
So I interrupted you a little earlier just to pull that point up because I think it's really important. But so you were saying this new judge comes in, you think you're going to go for a hearing where you get to explain the facts and figure out what happens next. What actually happened in that hearing?
So the hearing was about 5 to 10 minutes. She got up there, said, all motions denied, and have a nice day, basically. So that was shocking because, again, there's a lot of motions. We were expecting to be able to have oral arguments. She's just gotten this case. She's not, can't be that familiar with it. She even denied the amicus briefs that were offered to the court, which is, if you're unfamiliar, is a friend of the court letter. It's just industry participants. They're not for the defense or for the prosecution. They're just letters to help inform, help educate the court on matters that are complex, such as Bitcoin. And this judge, she's a judge. She's not a Bitcoin expert. She's a woman in her 80s. I'm not sure how much she had heard about it outside of this case or maybe other negative press. I don't know if she knew and would have understood how the software operated.
Okay, so at that point, when you have that 5-minute hearing, she says everything's dismissed. Is that when you're like, okay, we could be in trouble here? Yeah, and the attorneys, because we had 2 defense attorneys work together, but 2 defendants need 2 defense teams, and they were both pretty shocked. It was, startling to them because they were ready and prepared to present this. This is what they've been working on for over a year, and we all left that meeting pretty dejected and realizing that this is not looking good. It doesn't look good ever, really, when you're going up against the federal government. They have endless resources. They can call, right? They do, and you're just a person. But this definitely changed the math on what the likely outcome would be. So at that point, did you think that, obviously we'll get to what actually happened, but if you had have gone to trial and tried to fight this out in the courts, did you think you'd get a fair fight?
No. This judge, who was formerly the chief prosecutor of the criminal division within the Southern District of New York, so the same group that was bringing charges, she was acting as a 5th prosecutor from the bench by denying all these motions. And I didn't realize this until going through this process. But judges have so much control over the outcome of a trial. They get to decide what kind of defense you put on, what witnesses are seen, what evidence is presented to the jury, even what words you can say. In Roman Storm, the Tornado Cash case, I believe they weren't allowed to say privacy, and so it's kind of hard. So they really, depending who the judge is, will depend on whether you're found innocent or guilty, regardless if you are innocent.
I mean, as someone who's absolutely not a lawyer and also not American, that seems like the most unjust thing I've ever heard. It feels like they've got their weight on the scale from before the case even starts. But so from there, is that the point where you start looking at plea deals?
So we actually didn't approach them. We were still continuing along, and the government came to us, and both Keonne and Bill and their legal teams and said, we're going to give you 24 hours to think this over, and here's the plea deal. You both need to take it, or it's void. If one of you wants to take it, doesn't matter. We're going to continue on. And the deal was you plead to unlicensed money service business, operating, and we drop the money laundering charge. So the money laundering charge is a 20-year charge. So it, brings it down to, you're looking at 5 years max, which is, it's never a good position to be in, but, Bill's in his late 60s, so 25 years, that's life. And it was a really tough decision. It was a tough 24 hours thinking, we didn't do this. We know we didn't do this. But will a jury understand? And the answer was probably no.
If the court system worked differently and you thought you could have put together like a fair argument and it was an even playing field, you could have presented the facts, do you think that would have changed what you did?
Yeah, if it wasn't until the judge changed that we were, even considered it. We were full steam ahead to trial. This judge also has a reputation to being, it's not supposed to happen, but a trial penalty. And some judges do this, and again, it's not supposed to happen. But if you go to trial and you lose, they'll give you extra time for, in their opinion, wasting the court's time. And again, not supposed to happen, but happens regularly.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So those 24 hours, tell me what was going through your mind. Did Keonne want to fight it? Did he just think, okay, this is the best deal we're going to get? Like, what was the mindset?
It was back and forth. It really was. A lot of them wanted to fight it. A lot of them, he wasn't thinking about himself because he was thinking about, me and his family and everyone else, because in his mind, if he was single, he could do 25 years, whatever, but his, honor would be intact. But, when you're married, when you have a mother and his grandmother, who he hadn't seen at this point for a couple of years because she's in the UK, and he's been on house arrest. So there was a lot that went into it, and I think a lot of people maybe from the outside think, oh, I would fight it to the end, but you have to think about other people, and that was hard on me because, I'm thinking like I wanted him to do what was right for him, and he wanted to do what was right for me, and yeah, it was. And then we had another family to think about too, right? Because if we said no and they wanted to take it, then we're ruining their chances, and yeah, it was.
I mean, I definitely don't think many people here would have taken the risk of 25 years over a guaranteed maximum 5. You said then that he could have done it with his honor intact. Was that something that weighed on him? Because I don't think anyone who's been following this case or following him thinks his honor is not intact.
Yeah, and that was, so they did decide to take the plea. And at that point, what you do is you have to go in front of the judge and you have to say, hey, I'm changing my plea. And you have to explain in your words what you did wrong. That's really hard because he didn't do anything wrong. So there was a lot of back and forth between the lawyers, the prosecutors, and Keonne, because he said, I will not lie. Like, I am not going to get up there and lie, because that's, for him, that was an honor thing. And so he was able to form his allocution in a way that did tell the truth. He said, I, with my partner Bill, created and maintained Samourai Wallet. We offered our software, knowing that users could transact. Again, key users could transact. I think it was Bitcoin from criminal sources, which is completely true, right? Anything we know, I think we all know that criminals can use anything, and they do, especially, if it's good, the internet, messaging apps.
They love using the banks.
Banks, and those, they just have to regulate. And that was kind of one of the interesting things is in finding this all out. And this is just taking the government's numbers, because we never looked into, did the analysis on the blockchain of it. But the amount of what they say is criminal or illicit proceeds that users of those used Whirlpool, the percentage was in line with banks. So people who do have to do KYC and AML, same numbers. So I don't, yeah.
But and the key thing there, like you say, is that this is just a tool, and it's the same thing that makes it incredibly powerful for human rights activists and dissidents and just normal people who care about privacy is the same thing that makes it powerful for criminals. And if you can't control your users, then I mean, according to the FinCEN guidelines, I guess that's okay.
Yeah.
Tough. So you go to the court. You know that his maximum potential sentence is 5 years. Were you going in prepared for 5 years? Is that what you thought would happen?
I think he was. I think he had in his head, and that's a real possibility, and you do kind of have to face that. Our attorneys were thinking, no, it won't go that high. They were wrong. This judge did not like Keonne. She brought up in the sentencing his libertarian ideologies and, you know, this and that. And
so politics came into it.
Yeah. And she maxed out everything she could. If she could have given him life, she would have. She, you know, did max prison sentence, max fine. You know, she was ready to take him to custody then. But fortunately, he had agreed, the prosecution had agreed prior that he could self-surrender to prison and wouldn't have to go to the Brooklyn jail until prison was assigned. So he was able to leave there.
I mean, we spoke about this in the show today, but the thing that I can't even imagine is how weird that time was between sentencing and then the time that he has to actually self-surrender and go to prison. Like, how was those like interim months of your life?
Yeah, I think I told you this earlier. So that, you know, I was pretty weepy and cried a bunch, and he was very practical and wanted to make sure that, you know, everything that he took care of in the house was written down in a way that I would be able to do it, right? So, you know, making the internet work if it goes out, and like just basic things that I just didn't do. And so, you know, he's very pragmatic, and so he worked on that, and he tried to learn as much as he could about the prison he was going to, and, you know, read books or blogs from guys who had served time and talked to a few of them, and just tried to kind of get his head around what the next potentially 5 years of his life were going to be.
And so that day when he goes in, just tell me about what you were feeling.
It was really weird. So we drove down. We're about an hour and a half, thankfully, north from the prison, so not too far. But you know what's coming, and so you're trying to hold on to some kind of normalcy. And talking about, you know, there's a cow or the weather, or, you know, whatever. But we're getting closer, and then it's like, okay, well, let's go get a coffee. Let's stretch this out as much as we can. And eventually you just have to, you know, I had to drop him off. And I couldn't go in, like you had to stop at the visitors parking lot and just watch him walk away. And that was really hard because I didn't know when you self-surrender, and it was on a Friday, and your money for commissary doesn't clear until like Monday, right? So we didn't know that. We should have put it on the books earlier. But so thankfully he was able to call someone else to let him use their phone, so he could call me and let me know he's okay, because that's just, you just don't know. And then I was able to go see him a few days later. I think it was Christmas was the first time I was able to go see him, but actually seeing him in person, be like, okay, you're okay. You're alive, you know, you've eaten, you're, you know, they're nice to you. Like all that kind of stuff was definitely reassuring, but it was hard the first dropping him off.
Was there any period after the sentencing before you dropped him off where either of you thought we made a mistake by not taking this all the way?
No, because I think at sentencing, the vitriol that she spoke to him about him, we realized, yeah, this was definitely the right choice. Yeah, that she, you know, and people say, well, you could have fought it if you lost a trial, then you could have appealed it. There's appealable things, and that's all true. But, you know, there's a couple things to consider with that. one, we're already a couple $1 million in debt for like not even getting to trial. A trial within the Southern District of New York for a complex case such as this takes about, roughly about 13 million per defendant to take it to trial. So you take it to trial and then you appeal. That's also very expensive. And especially with this judge, and there's guys in prison with Keonne from different places, but they are appealing their sentences from prison. So you could spend 5 years in prison appealing your sentence, or you could be out. And that's, all of that played into it as well, obviously.
I do want to get into like what happens next, but what's the prison like? Because all I know of prison is what I see on TV and movies. Like, is it as terrifying as it looks?
No, thankfully, it's a standalone federal prison camp, which means, there's no barbed wires. It's not like a scary place. It's in actually a beautiful part of West Virginia. So there's like rolling hills and things. But, it's still prison. You still don't have your freedom. You still, simple things. You have to go these places, you're paid 5 cents an hour or whatever for your job that you must maintain. And, so it's not a pleasant place, but it's not, it's not what you're picturing.
It's not as bad as it could have been.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And does he have a job?
He does. He's a bathroom orderly, which there's a few things with that. I think firstly, I don't know if I knew he could clean a bathroom before he went in. But secondly, I think when he comes home, he's going to be getting on me about my cleaning skills.
Not how I did it in jail.
Yeah. It's he's very meticulous now about it, and so yeah, it's it's interesting
And is he okay?
He is. I mean, he's bored. He tries to read a lot, but there's only so much you can read, and there's very interesting people in there with him that he's at least can talk with, and unfortunately, a lot of guys are in there for conspiracy charges, which all seem pretty dubious. There are some people that will admit like, yeah, no, I was doing the drugs or whatever it is, but there's a lot of people in similar situations. And, he's just trying to get by one day at a time.
But it's not like the violent hellhole that you see on movies?
No, it's not violent, thankfully.
Yeah, good. Okay, so because he pled guilty, there's obviously no appeal process at this point. But what is your next sort of step? What are you trying to do now?
So we have submitted an application for pardon. We really think this case merits it for a variety of reasons, and President Trump would be the president to grant this pardon. Not only has he seen firsthand what the Southern District of New York federal prosecutors do, they were the body that went after him, and so he knows their lies and their manipulations and such. He also likes Bitcoin, and I think wants to see it be a success. And so there's, for a variety of reasons, I think if this gets his attention and he realizes, or the people around him realize that this is something that Bitcoiners do care about, he will, grant the pardon.
And how do Bitcoiners signal that they care about this? Like, what do you need people to do?
So first, if you know President Trump, please give him a call. I think behind me we have the change.org address. It's also linked, I think, everywhere. So if you go to that and sign it, Ross Albrecht and Lynn both said that their, what is that called? Pardon? Petition, yes. Sorry. Their petition really did play a key factor in Ross getting his pardon. The fact that they had 100,000 signatures that they could point to and say, this is something people care about. We're a little over 15,000 now, which is great, and I'm so thankful for everyone who has taken the time to sign it. but it's definitely slowed down. I'm not the spokesperson that Keonne is, and he was able to, that brief time in between really tell his story, and just from his voice, which is, so impactful. So, I'm hoping that will continue to grow. I shouldn't be comparing too much to Ross, because it did take them years and years to get there. But the Bitcoin community is bigger now, so I'm hoping, people will, takes 2 minutes.
And very different circumstances. If you've not signed this, please go to change.org/Bill and Keonne. Sign the petition. We should be able to pump those numbers. And in terms of actually getting a pardon, and obviously you're going to be hopeful, but is it realistic? Do you think this is something that you and the Bitcoin community and everyone gets behind and can actually happen?
I think it is. Again, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen under President Trump. He wants to be the Bitcoin president. He has said the war on crypto is over. It's not, but that's what the administration's moving towards. He's behind the Clarity Act, which my speculation, I haven't been told this, but my speculation is that it was the BRCA within that was written in direct results to these prosecutions against Keonne Bill and Roman and others. So there's all the motivation to sign the pardon. It just, he's president of the United States. He's a pretty busy man. Needs to be made aware of it.
It's one of those things that I don't think many people really understand how these things work, because the only pardon that I've really ever paid any attention to is Ross's. There's a huge queue, I've heard, for these pardons. How do you make sure that Keonne is the one that gets in front of him?
Making a popular case, so signatures, people talking about it. Social media does matter. It really does. That's something that they track. Calling, any politicians, letting them know, letting your representatives and your senators know that this is something that matters to you. And then, also we have pardon attorneys who submitted the application, and so relying on them that they did a good job, which I think they did. So it's just, it's a factor of a lot of things, but.
The only thing left is Mr. Trump.
Yes.
Let's go. Well, we've got everything crossed for you. We really hope that the next time we do this, Keonne's with us. I think we're going to open up some questions. Do we have a mic to go around, or are we just going to shout them out? Okay. I'll repeat some questions if we get any. Okay, let's go.
How did this case get tried in the Southern District?
Interesting. So, we live in Pennsylvania, like I said. Bill lives in Portugal. And Samourai Wallet never had any dealings in New York, never had an office, or I don't think they were ever there. They wouldn't have ever been there on any business related things. So the way the Southern District claimed jurisdiction was they sent an FBI agent down onto the streets of Manhattan. He downloaded Samourai Wallet from the Google Play Store and made a Bitcoin transaction. That's it.
That's wild.
Yep.
How long do you think they'd been following this case? Because we were speaking a little earlier. I don't know how much you can talk about this.
Yeah, I don't know, because I know this, but this was in Discovery. It was I don't know if I can say this.
Okay, let's not risk anything. Okay. Anyway,
For a while.
For a while. Who else has got a question? Someone must have one.
You mentioned the prosecution's novel legal theory in this case. Can you kind of unpack what that means exactly, in terms of their code being the conspiracy, and maybe get into the wider implications that they have in the Bitcoin ecosystem for other people that are maybe developing software themselves, or even run nodes or miners, how that would affect them?
Sure. So the way conspiracies charges are supposed to work, and they don't, but this is how they're supposed to work, is that the government is supposed to prove that the parties entered into an agreement to break federal law. So I think we can all imagine how that would happen, and probably seen it play out on movies or television shows. This case, there was never any of that. They never spoke with a criminal and said, yeah, we're going to launder your money, or yeah, this is what we intend. That wasn't. They built the software and were very vocal about it. They built the wallet first and foremost for themselves to use, and everyone else was along for the ride. What the prosecution said was that the act of developing the software, writing the code, that act in itself was the conspiracy. So that goes against, Bernstein versus the U.S., which says code is speech. A few other kind of the novel aspects is, like I said before, FinCEN's the regulator who's charged by Congress to enforce these laws, and the legislator writes the laws, and they're supposed to enforce the laws written by the legislator. This case, they took what was understood and said, no, that's wrong, and brought charges anyways, which goes against, there's supposed to be constitutional protections where if a law is ambiguous, which this wasn't, but if there's a law that's ambiguous, then it's always supposed to err on the side of the defense to make things fair. And if you are changing interpretation or changing laws, notice is supposed to be given. It says, hey, we're doing this, you might be in violation, watch out, change your business. That didn't happen. So really every way they went by this was wrong, not how our system's supposed to operate. As to how this can have wider implications, especially on the Bitcoin space, by saying that even though they didn't have custody, they were still money transmitters, they were transmitting money. Well, on Bitcoin, as we know, a transaction is not really a transaction until it's mined in a block. So if you extrapolate that, right, anyone who passes information, which is all they did, they passed packages of messages, that's what the software did, is potentially a money transmitter, therefore in violation of money transmitter laws and money laundering laws. And then, so, right, miners definitely, because they actually mine transactions. Yeah, it continues. It's really a sad state.
That was where we saw sort of the chilling effect from this. Not long after all this happened, I think Phoenix withdrew from the US, Wallet of Satoshi. And so people clearly saw this as having maybe broader implications. Awkward question. On the sort of what is conspiracy around this, I know one of the big things that the prosecution were going to try and rely on was some tweets. And don't get me wrong, some of the tweets were a little out there, but they were clearly like memes, jokes, like it was a bit of an inside joke in Bitcoin Twitter. Was that basically all the prosecution was based on?
Yeah, so they had the Twitter posts. They had, I think they pulled out a slide from like a 40-page slide deck that was, again, 9-10 years old. And then they had, I think Bill had written on Dread, and if anyone was following Samourai for a while in the drama kind of around, which I won't get into, but those replies were all directly saying, and Dread, what Dread was is pretty much Reddit of Tor. Mm-hmm. So it's just, message boards. But that's, and then a few, personal messages. But again, you're talking about people that have been talking, and this wasn't between Keonne and Bill, this is between like other friends or other people that would message them, and they would pull, one line out of some of these text threads went back years. And just imagine what you've said to your friends.
The lack of context there is crazy.
Yeah. And then, there was one which was, it was Keonne saying to, and this was a high school friend, hadn't really seen, but they texted back and forth, and he told him to buy Bitcoin like forever ago, and this guy messages him. This is before Whirlpool is even out. And he messages him and says, hey, what is mixing? And at that time, what mixing really was custodial mixers.
Yep.
And this guy keeps asking him, has asked him questions for years and doesn't really follow through. So he's like, it's money laundering for Bitcoin, right? This guy's not a Bitcoiner. He'll understand that. And he says, okay. And then further down this thread, that's what they pulled out. Mixing is money laundering for Bitcoin. You go further down, and the guy's kind of actually showing some interest. So he goes into, well, why would you want to mix? You'd want to mix because the blockchain's a public open ledger, and it's, the same thing as having your bank statement for anyone to read. And so you'd want to mix so you have privacy from criminals, not for criminals to use. And just, goes into to kind of all the details of why you would want to mix. And again, this is pre-Whirlpool. They did not have a CoinJoin mixing service at this time. But this is, the government loved that, obviously.
And again, on a technical level, there's a very big difference between an old custodial mixer and what a CoinJoin became.
Correct.
But and one of them I know is that after the Russian sanctions, there was something like welcome Russian oligarchs, clearly a joke. And these are the things that were potentially Keonne's life was going to be in the balance over. Yeah,
it was written in English. I don't even think it got that much engagement, but it said, well, welcome new Russian oligarch users. And if you would search welcome new Samourai Wallet users, you would pull up a lot, and welcome new Fed users, welcome new Nigerian government.
It was his meme template.
Yeah, and some of them he thinks they're still really funny. So if you want to go,
well, I agree, they're quite funny. Okay, has anyone? Yeah, we got another question here.
Yes, you had mentioned that your lawyers have been working on this for a year plus, and you guys obviously spent a lot of money to do that, a lot of time spent, and a lot of work produced in terms of record keeping. I don't understand the system enough, but is there some time frame where what was built that never got to be shown, or can be shown to those compared?
I believe the motion to dismiss was, I'm looking at ECO, was published or was on, because it's a court document, so it is somewhere. I don't know, but it's actually really interesting, the case law that they cite. I'll go over a little bit of it. So one of the things they cited was a 1940s Prohibition era case where a sugar manufacturer was selling to bootleggers, and in the appeals process that was deemed that's okay. They were not part of the conspiracy because they didn't take an active role in it. And then another case was from the 90s, and it was a grow light manufacturer who advertised in High Times magazine, and again, he was found guilty at trial, but was overturned on appeals because just advertising and criminals, growing, which at the time was illegal to grow marijuana, does not constitute entering into a conspiracy. So those were really interesting case laws. But it is out there somewhere.
I never asked you this on the podcast, but you're not a lawyer by background, are you?
No.
Because you sound like a lawyer now. You've had to learn.
Spent a lot of time with them.
Okay, who else got a question? Yeah, let's go here.
So it sounds like the appeals was an expensive path to take. Do you think it would have gone differently, or you guys would have chose a different path rather than infinite funds?
Good question. I'm just worried about everyone on the live stream who can't hear the questions. The question was, if you had infinite funds, would you have gone a different way?
Yeah, I think that probably was a factor, to be honest. I don't know if... I don't know, because it doesn't change the fact that they would have probably been in prison for that time, but I think it does open up a lot of possibilities. If you guys aren't familiar with, Roman Storm's case was a little bit ahead of ours in it, and this Tornado Cash, which I don't fully understand, it's smart contracts, but so he went to trial and cost a ton of money. Southern District, New York as well. I can't believe I would say this because I wouldn't have said it had I not experienced our judge, but a much friendlier judge. She at least heard their arguments. He was found guilty on the money transmission charge, and then they were hung on, he had a sanctions violation which we didn't, but in the money laundering. And so he's appealing his one, so it'll be really interesting to see what comes out of that. But the government just announced, I think last week, that they're going to retry him on the other two things that the jury was hung on. So he has to go through another crazy process of this. And
Is he in jail while he's doing this? Or
no, thankfully, his judge, so it's again, judge discretion, where she said he was allowed to remain out to do his appeals and stuff. So
the other question this, I think, kind of relates to is the discovery process in this case. Because I forget how many terabytes that this is, but it's an insane number. I think you told me that if it was printed out piece of paper, it'd go to the moon and back
22 times, 17 terabytes of data.
So just trawling through that data is obviously insanely time expensive and money expensive. If you had have had more money, do you think that could have swayed the outcome? Because one of the most disappointing things from a Bitcoiner perspective of this trial is watching how much the Tornado Cash guys managed to raise from the Ethereum crew, and that sort of, I think what you managed to raise from Bitcoin has paled in significance compared to that.
Yeah, and I don't want to take anything away from Roman because he deserves to have everything he can to fight his case. But they raised a lot more. BPI stepped up big time because, it set up the fund for us. So when they came in, and that's, for anyone who was or still is using Samourai software, the government never was able to confiscate the Bitcoin. They stored the Bitcoin on Samourai Wallet on phone. That's how the companies, they ate their dog food, as they would say. But part of the stipulations for bail was that they were not allowed to make cryptocurrency transactions. So though there was company Bitcoin, they were not allowed to use that to pay for their defense. BPI stepped up and they raised about $1 million that was split between both defense teams. Yeah, that's,
when
very grateful for it.
Of course.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to, you said it was $13 million each, if it went to trial, that's not getting you a very long way.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else got any good questions? Yeah, let's go here.
I know he's very private, but with respect to his privacy, is Bill in a similar prison? Is he in the United States or is he actually elsewhere?
Yeah, so the question there is, what about Bill? Which is a good thing to bring up. So the question was, where is he? What's his status right now?
So Bill was sentenced to 4 years. He is also in a prison camp. The way you get assigned to different levels of prisons is there's a pre-sentencing report, and if you're violent, then that's taken into account. If there's a lot of things that factor in how long your sentence is, all these things factor in, and so they're both sentenced to where they fell on that spectrum was prison camp. So he's in a prison camp in the U.S. The issue is, so Bill's a U.S. citizen, but has lived in Europe for most of his life. His wife is not a U.S. citizen, so unfortunately she's had to go back to Portugal. And I'm so grateful that, which is a weird thing to say, but the fact that I can go, I can drive to the prison and see Keonne every week, where they have the phone systems, and that's it. And if anyone's called someone from jail or prison, they are bad quality. It cuts out. You're always aware that there's possibly another person listening. So you're not that anything bad or anything would be said, but it's still.
You don't want someone listening to all your conversations.
Yeah, it's a
all
weird
these gross
situation.
people listening to our conversation right now. So do these pardons go hand in hand, though? Is the likelihood that they both get pardoned together?
Yeah, they're co-founders, co-defendants, and they'll be their cases. There was never a one pitted against the other. They've been through this process, through Samourai, through so much together, and they'll come out together. They're submitted together. And,
that's the way.
Yeah.
Okay, who else got a question?
When they compensated things from you guys' phones, were those returned? Do you have any idea what they went through?
the question here is, when they confiscated everything, did it get returned? Did they? Did
Not
they
yet.
Look through all these? Oh, really? It's not come back.
So Keonne would like his passports back because, clearly he's not a flight risk right now. He's in prison. But no, computers, servers, phones, my old phones, they took over 40 devices from our house. And they broke the one server, which had like our Plex on it, which was really sad. But they didn't get that. And I think they got into like 16 of the devices. I don't know if maybe they're still trying. But again, some of these were like busted computers that I think he bought at like garage sales. Like they were not. So we have to like apply to get them back and then wait for government bureaucrats to do something. But he just would like his passports back so that when he is out, he can go see his family.
This might be too personal to answer, and tell me if it is, but when he does get out, is he like, I'm out of here, the US is done for me, I want to be somewhere else, or does he still want to call this place home?
Well, our home is here, and we live close to my parents, so we'll be staying here, but he definitely wants to go on a trip for a little bit when he's free and clear to do so.
Have some time away.
Yeah, it's hard when, your government is turned against you in a very personal way, and
yeah, he must feel betrayed by this whole thing.
Yeah, because it's not, again, he was here to say, he still does not think, and I don't think he did anything wrong. You could say, well, you shouldn't have said this, but then you're stepping into like, well, I thought we had free speech, and maybe we don't.
When you go and see him, is it how you imagine it, like talking through glass on a phone to each other?
No, we sit in little, like full-form plastic chairs. There's no glass in between us. It's a large room, and there's vending machines. And we have to sit across from each other. And there's like a low coffee table, which is kind of weird. I wish there was like a normal height table.
Yeah, that's so like, it's kind of intimidating sitting like that with anyone.
Yeah, and like they're almost like school chairs is the only thing I can kind of think of. It's just plastic chairs, and there's a red one he sits in, and then there's some blue ones that I can sit in. But I've had a couple people say, well, like, oh, I don't think I could just talk to my husband that long, because it is. But he's if you've read any of his letters, he's a great storyteller, and so he likes to entertain me by that, and I fill him in on what's going on out here because he's very disconnected, obviously. But I get to feed him from the vending machines, which I just like, please, I wish we could bring in something else. Like I'd bring enough for the whole class if I could, but it's a vending machine. Burgers and coffees and.
Does he have something that he's like craving? Is there like a first meal he wants when he gets out?
I feel like he's told me and I don't remember, but I feel we have discussed this. So, yeah.
And can you give him a hug?
I can hug when I go in, and then when I leave. But so visiting hours are from like 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. So it's a nice long time. I don't quite get there at 8 just because I live, further away. But it's, you get to hug him when you go in there. The guards kind of know that it's a camp, and it's a bit more relaxed. Yeah, they're not, but you're not supposed to touch in between, you can't hold hands or anything, which is, it's kind of sad. And there was another young couple that was there, and I guess they were holding hands, and the girlfriend got up and went to the restroom, and I guess the guards went over to the guys like, hey, you need to cut that out, and I guess she was standing behind him and was like real embarrassed. Yeah, so
Bradley.
It's,
I was pretty disheartened when I heard that they were retrying Roman, and I wondered, did that make you a bit disheartened about the stance of the Department of Justice? Or are these just two separate entities, like the Trump DOJ and the Southern District of New York, who are retrying it?
I was disheartened because, the deputy AG had put out the Blanche memo that said, hey, we're not doing these things anymore. And the Southern District of New York likes to refer to themselves as the sovereign district. So that kind of shows you their opinions of Maine DOJ. these line prosecutors are, I guess, an entity of their own, or so they seem. It would be nice if they, right, would comply. Like, I feel like any other job, you'd be out of there if if your CEO is telling you, hey, cut that out, and you continue on. But that's where you are, and hopefully it will filter down. It's just, right, the DOJ is a monster, and to police all these cases, which might not even be on main DOJ's radar.
With the judge that stepped aside, do you think he was seen as, I mean, this is speculation, but like too lenient? Do you think he was, do you think they tried to replace that judge with someone who was going to be harsher, to try and make a sort of a statement?
So anything I would say on this is speculation, and the truth is I don't know, right? It's a judge can recuse themselves, but usually once they take a case on, they see it through, and they would only recuse themselves because there's a conflict, because they're sick, and like none of these things applied to Judge Berman at the time. We just don't know. It is suspicious.
It is suspicious. I've got my suspicions. Yeah, let's go here.
So I know you've gotten a conversation with like civilian what is it about the culture within the Islam district? What is it about that specific culture?
So they see themselves as the premier prosecution, I guess, office in the country. They take on high profile and financial crimes. The prosecutions in general within the U.S. are, prosecutors, I should say, are more liberal leaning. That's just kind of a fact. These particular guys, I don't know. I think they were, right, so under Biden, I think it was Damian Williams, someone could correct me if I'm wrong, was in charge of the SDNY, Southern District of New York. And he had made a statement that he wanted to be known as the sheriff of crypto. And this is referencing back to someone in the 90s who was known as the sheriff of Wall Street, who like took down bad Wall Street guys. And so this was his own moniker, and he sent out his AUSAs, and my assumption is said, go find me some cases. And what do you want to do if you're an AUSA? You want to advance your career and either turn these wins into a private, working as a defense attorney, which every defense attorney we met with, that was their selling factor, is we were formerly prosecutors within SDNY or other, DOJ, or you turn it into a political career and advancement. So I don't even know if they personally have any feelings about Bitcoin. We do know that other people within this do. There's another judge, Judge Radkoff, who made a statement a few months ago, something to the effect of he sees no value in cryptocurrencies outside of for criminal and fraud, something along those lines. So like those are the sentiments. I think we've all heard Senator Warren and her comments on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies at large. People do have these real sentiments. The only way to really adjust that is to be like, no, we're normal people. This is why we like it. This is why privacy matters. It really does take education, as kind of boring as that is, but change the hearts and minds.
Yeah, it feels like one of those things progress one funeral at a time type things. Okay, have we got any more questions? Eric, have you got a question?
I'm just happy we're all here.
Yeah, let's go, Tyler.
I think a lot of Americans that perhaps aren't as keen on the legal system this is another example, another slap to the face, a realization that judges hold a lot of power in our court system. Have you or Keonne given any thought to, in the broader spectrum of things, how do we solve that? I think this is becoming a case that maybe it's not Keonne's case, I hope it is, but other people are realizing, wait a second, I didn't realize that's how the government works. How much power do these judges have? Actually, it's a recurring theme, I feel. But do you have any thoughts on how that gets solved?
Not really. So through this situation through being involved in this case and kind of now being more public. I've had so many people reach out to me, outside of Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, but dealing with the federal government saying, me too. That happened to me. Prosecutors did that, same thing, just over and over, same stories. So I think it's the justice system as a whole, not necessarily just judges. I think potentially because the DOJ is having to fight judges who have agendas, that maybe something will be done there. But the DOJ at large and the fact that it's no longer about truth, justice, those things don't matter. It's all about career advancement and the win. For the country as a whole, I hope something changes. How that comes about, I don't know. I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Okay, yeah, well, let's go here.
So, yeah, I guess I have one question or maybe a statement. So, this group is kind of a niche, right? Screaming it, great, big audience of people that are like-minded. But have you had an opportunity to put in front of a larger audience on a different platform? I mean, like I said, we all have an opportunity, but have you had that opportunity?
So the question there, again, I'm just thinking of the people on live stream, is we're a bunch of weirdos, we're niche, we're small. How do you get in front of more people?
I hope those opportunities do present themselves. It just takes someone to see what Bitcoin did, or, someone sees this and tells someone who knows, hey, I have a good story for you. That's why, like I said, social media does really play a part, because a lot of those people, that's how they look for content to fill. Right, we're in 24 hours news cycles now. They constantly looking for stuff, and maybe it'll be, my turn. My position with this has been, I'll walk through whatever doors opened, because I think, it's important. Obviously, it's very important to me, but I do think it's important on a larger scale, and I'm open to it. No one's approached me yet. I've, tried, but maybe they will. And, I think you kind of have to be out there somewhat for then other people to take an interest.
Totally. And I know, again, it's still within our own little niche, but you're going to be in Vegas. Hopefully there's people there. Like, there's a lot of politicians floating around these conferences now. Hopefully it gets in front of the right people. I want to bring something up that I know you won't, so I'm going to. Obviously, one thing people can do is go to change.org/BillandKeonne and sign the petition. But you have spent an absolute fortune on this legal case. Is there any way that people can still donate to that?
Yeah, so BPI was the legal defense fund. They've since shut that for us, which, is because the legal case is over. But if people were so generous to donate to us, you can go to billandkeonne.org, and through there's a link to the change.org, and there's also links to donate. It really, everything's split between Bill's family and our family, 50-50, like their whole business, and it really does help. Like, it's weird to get up here and like ask people for money, but it's unfortunately where we're at.
That's why I tried to ask for you. Okay, anyone else? Let's go.
I just got a comment. We've got a letter writing station over here with the address for Keonne's prison. There's envelopes, there's stamps, there's pens, there's paper. If you don't feel comfortable writing the letter here, at least take a picture of the instructions and take it home. Feel free to take any of those supplies home and write them on it. But we're just asking for people to show up and show support for Keonne. Let them know you're out here. Let them know you're thinking of them. And just get in touch with them. We really appreciate it.
Awesome.
The instructions matter, so don't follow them, it won't get through, or it'll come back to you, so the written already there.
Yeah, for those online, if you didn't hear that, and you can do this at home as well, they've set up which is so great, a letter writing station so that people can write letters. His address for mail is also on the billandkeonne.org website. He, does not have connections to the outside world, so he would love to hear from you. He's tried to write everyone back who's written him. There are stipulations, like they were saying, like has to be in a white envelope and has to have a return address, can't be more than 5 pages, but all that information is on the website. So if you're listening from home and would like to write him, definitely love to hear from you.
Are these the kind of things that make a real difference? Because I imagine it's boring as hell. Like, what is he doing? Is he reading books, obviously letters? Like, what's his sort of day-to-day?
So he gets up absurdly early, he always has, and he writes, I think he's probably read over 40 books already since he's been in.
Damn, like what, 3 months or something?
Yeah, I mean, he'll read a book a day. Like, it's just, there's nothing else to do.
He's going to come out like a gigabrain.
Yeah, there's walking, there's handball, there's like little things like that, but you can only do that so long.
Does he get much time outside? What's the kind of rules around that?
So the way it's set up is they actually have to walk from building to building. So there is outside, and there's, like I said, it's actually quite beautiful. Through the compound, there's a stream, so they have to like cross a bridge, and there's a stream with like ducks and that don't migrate because the prisoners feed them very well. So they all line up outside the, where the cafeteria is and wait to be fed. So yeah, he is able to go outside, but it's been very cold, so hopefully it'll warm up a bit.
Yeah, Bradley, let's go.
Is he restricted to books that are already there, or could he send books?
This is a question I asked before. So the question was, is he restricted to books that are already there?
No. You can, they do have a pretty good library there because prisoners will donate books, but you can send him books. They cannot be from you personally. They need to come new from like an Amazon or, a retailer is how he could receive them. So yeah, he's been sent some interesting ones that I think he's really enjoyed. And
I think I know which book Bradley wants to send him. Okay, let's go to the The question here is, I assume by they you mean do like the guards read the letters before they're given to the prisoner?
So they are opened to make sure there's not contraband in them. They could read them. I don't know if they care to actually read the contents, but don't write anything illegal.
I would say
'cause they
safest
can,
to assume
yeah.
they do read them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Yes, we got. Ooh, we might have a broken link. We'll get that fixed.
It's because everyone's going, hopefully.
Yeah, we've crashed the servers. There's too many people trying to sign the petition. It worked okay.
Okay.
Okay, we'll blame it on the Spaces Wi-Fi. Okay, it's working. Good. Anyone else got any questions before we close out? I think we're good. First of all, thank you. Thank you for coming to Denver to do this.
Thank you all for coming.
I think it's safe to say you have the backing of everyone here, the backing of the Bitcoin world. Hopefully, in the next few months, we see Keonne out. But thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting this, and thank you all for coming and watching online. It really means a lot.
There's going to be a great podcast dropping next week.